On the bass guitar, all the way from Adelaide, Australia, Mr. Andy Cichon on the bass.
Hey everybody, this is Raul for Bass Musician Magazine, and tonight we have the great honor and pleasure of having a chance to chat with bassist Andy Cichon.
Oh, how are you?
Outstanding,
Good,
thank you.
good.
Kind of starting from the beginning, it's very interesting. You're originally from Australia, and my understanding is that you, in around 1997, took the leap and grabbed a couple of basses and came to New York City.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I've been over here before with the Australian bands touring. I think I first came over in '88 with the band that opened for Robert Palmer. The funny thing about that is that the keyboard player on that Robert Palmer tour in his band is actually Dave Rosenthal, who is Billy's musical director.
Oh, okay.
And we didn't really get to know each other then, but 18 years ago, I think almost to the day, I did my first full show with Billy in St. Louis. Like it's 18 years, I think today, exactly. Wow. And David and I got talking, and what brought you to the States? And I moved here in '97, but I came over in '88, and we were opening for Robert Palmer, and he goes, I was the keyboard player on that tour. And I was like, well, we had to keep driving to the next town as soon as we finished our set because we didn't have a tour bus. It was a last minute thing, but just kind of strange that happened that way. But yeah, it was '88 that tour. I did some recording over here with different Australian artists, and then '97 took the plunge.
Gotcha. And even going a little further back, because there's not a whole lot of information about your story. How did you get started in bass? Because you were doing. My understanding was you're doing really great in Australia.
Obviously by not a lot of self-promotion, because because
nobody knows anything.
No, I tend to keep to myself. I left a very straight university job working as a marine biology research assistant, much to my amateur musician father's chagrin, and I joined a band in Australia, a legendary rock band actually called Rose Tattoo. Okay. They were on the same label as AC/DC, and Joe Walsh actually was touring Australia with Rose Tattoo's manager and heard my demo tape where they were looking for a bass player. I'd plastered all the management companies in Sydney and Melbourne. I was from Adelaide originally. And he said, that's your guy. So Joe Walsh, thank you very much for giving me my start. And he knows that. I've texted with him and showed him my appreciation. So Rose Tattoo, I wrote a lot of songs with them. I was in that band for about 3 or 4 years. They disbanded. Rose Tattoo were kind of a big inspiration for Guns N' Roses. They actually covered a Rose Tattoo song called Nice Boys Don't Play Rock and Roll. And Axel's been on stage with Billy a couple of times this year and mentioned, oh, you're in Rose Tattoo, man, that was great. So from that, I worked with a guy called James Rain, who was managed by Roger Davies, who managed Tina Turner, Pink, Joe Cocker, and that's the band I came to the States with to tour. Gotcha. So James Rain was a big deal in Australia. Did some recording with a band called Icehouse that you might know over here. Electric Blue was a big hit over here, I think. Then I had a band of my own where I stopped playing bass for a while and fronted this hard rock band with hair down on my butt and screaming as high as I could, and that was fun. We got signed, it didn't work, so I went back to playing bass and worked with a guy called Billy Thorpe, who was Children of the Sun was a bit of a record over here in the 80s. He was a bit of a legend in Australia, and various other bands. And then '97, I finally went, okay, let's roll the dice.
It's so wild because the way the business has changed, and especially the flow of where music would go with music labels, and them, there could be a tremendous band in one place, but the label's not letting it play in another location. Yep. And I came across that with some of the Brazilian musicians. And I got these Brazilian CDs, but they're all in Japanese on the outside of the label because it was Sony Japan that was willing to let that stuff flow. And I'm like, this is great music, but who knew?
I think every time any international touring band ends up in Tokyo, there's always the best bootleg and CD collection. You all gravitate to this one place and find stuff that you just can't find anywhere else.
Yeah.
It's interesting how insular it all is, continent by continent, and it's a shame because there's a lot of great music that's come out of Australia that's never really been heard over here, and it's hard to get it's only a little country, 23 million people, and it's hard to have a voice on the international soundstage. But I do my bit to self-promote, even though I'm a dual citizen now, so,
Nice.
as American as I am Australian.
Well, and part of it, the world has gotten a lot smaller with the internet, and although it is arguably a point of contention for working musicians like yourself. We were speaking with one of the Warwick players, Antonella Massa,
Mm-hmm.
and she said somebody came up and introduced themselves as a YouTube star. And she was like, so who do you play with? They're like, no, I don't play with anybody. I play in my room on YouTube, and I've had all these million hits. And she's like, you need to play with other people, because if you're going to be a musician, that's what that's about. That's the old school.
I'm yet to invest the time in working out how you can actually make a living doing that on YouTube. I believe there are ways with different advertising, revenue streams and stuff, but it just seems like that would take a lot of time away from me actually playing music.
Gotcha.
I think there's I get that the day of the album, the CD is over, and I in a way kind of agree. Do I love MP3s? Not so much. However, I understand that the expense used in distributing a hard product is no longer exists.
Mm-hmm.
However, that doesn't mean that the artist and the writer should receive nothing. There's got to be a balance somewhere in between.
Absolutely.
And if people want to keep making original music, there's got to be some kind of middle ground so that we can keep eating. I can't imagine starting out now. It's got to be incredibly difficult.
Well, and most recently, Victor Wooten was telling us, he said, if you think back to the day, people used to get their TV for free and they would pay for records.
Right.
This is now, people will pay for TV, but they want their music free. And he's like, I'm telling you, support musicians, buy our stuff.
Victor is a wise man and a great player and a fellow Federa player. And also, I am very proud to say that I have had the honor of playing with one of his favorite drummers and one of my favorite drummers, which would be J.D. Blair, the groove regulator.
Nice.
So we played with Shania Twain for many years together, and it was an absolute joy. So I get what Victor got playing with J.D.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, moving forward, you're here in town with Billy Joel, and I know, again, you've played with Shania and you've played with Shotgun Wedding. You had...
Sure, that was a little love project we had in New York City. And also, I think the very first thing I did when I came to the States was Five for Fighting, John Ondrasik.
Okay.
He had that was a great experience. He had his debut album out, and then a whole EMI reshuffle happened, and he kind of found himself without a deal, but got re-signed because he's a very worthy artist. And sadly, in between EMI closing at first and him re-signing, I then got the Shania Twain thing, and so I couldn't come back. But that was fun. And then, yes, almost... I saw a thing today on Shania's Facebook feed that it's 20 years since Come On Over came out. So actually, at this time, 20 years ago, I was ensconced in Lake Placid, New York, with her and her then husband, Mutt Lang, working on rehearsing the tour for that album. So 20 years, it's just unfathomable.
Time does fly.
Wow.
It's something. And when did you get started with Billy Joel?
I actually did my first thing with him in... July of '99, he did it was a corporate show in New York City, and it was, I think, 12 songs. I was acquainted, we had mutual friends, and he was obviously aware of my playing with Shania, and we'd met a few times, and said, get Andy Cichon to do this gig. So I'm like, sure, I'll come play. It was easy, dozen songs. It was interesting because during this daytime performance, a member of the audience collapsed, and Billy had to say, I can't believe that I'm actually saying this, but is there a doctor in the house? And we walked off stage in this hotel ballroom, and it was kind of cramped, and there was this kind of commotion going on, this shuffling, people pushing out of the way, and it was someone sort of coming backstage, this awkward time, going, tapping Billy on the shoulder. It was Mr. Donald Trump. So there you go, our now president. So there you go. But there was that. I did some recording with Billy that same month, a couple of tracks for a movie, and then I was back on the road with Shania. He needed someone to fill in for a couple of shows, December of '99, and so I finished with Shania on a Sunday, madly learning a full 2 hour 45-minute set in the back of the tour bus, and then flew to St. Louis, I think, on the Wednesday for the first show on the Friday with no rehearsal. It was like,
Wow.
with a lot of helpful cueing from the guys in the band, got me through it. And basically, after that, next time out on the road, I was the guy.
Nice.
So it's 18 years.
Very cool. Very cool. And I'd be remiss if I forget, because all us bass people are gear hounds and
Sure.
gear acquisition kind of people. Tell us a little bit about what is giving you your voice on the tour. I know Federa.
I'm pretty much a traditionalist, and it's funny how I was initially, as a kid, as a 16-year-old, I had a 66 P bass. I didn't even know how good it was, and I played Rickenbackers as well. I was a rock guy with a pick. And then I sort of hung it up at 18 and went into my bedroom for 3 years and, listened to Stanley and Jaco and Stu Ham and, Anthony Jackson. And 3 years after that, it sort of emerged, and I went all over the place. I liked Yamaha, basic Yamaha BB400, just sounded great acoustically. If it doesn't ring acoustically, it's not going to work for me. Yeah. And I journey through Yamahas and then music bands, and then I actually signed with Warwick in '88. I was the first Australian endorser of Warwick basses, and I was with them for 20 years. They were very supportive. And then kind of fell back in love with old Fenders again. Maple cap necked Fenders, 66 to 71 only. And it was because of that my Warwicks also had maple cap necks that I asked for in their design, and always PJ, 4 or 5 strings, there was always a PJ set up. I prefer a P up front, a little more growl and cut. Vinny Federa fixed a broken Warwick for me, which was very generous of him. And we realized that we are totally on the same, wavelength when it comes to bass design. And he's a very organic builder, and I'm like, I like older. I know it's not the prettiest of woods, but I like the way it sounds. Yeah. I like that combination with a maple cap neck, maple on maple. It's the cross, hatching of grains and stuff, make it a very bright piano-like sound, but with the warmth of alder. And I like underwound pickups. I like the wood to speak. I don't like to smother that wood with an over muscular electronics. So we agreed on all these things, and eventually we got to the point where I wanted those elements in my basses, which comes from my beginning as a Fender player. And then the first bass was a 5-string, one bass for any gig, PJ, 5-string, even though I probably prefer to play 4. Maple cap, alder, very soft, wide grain maple top. Flame maple looks beautiful. Nordstrand PJs, and a very nice custom-built Mike Pope preamp with my favorite high mid-frequency of 1.8K, which to me is just, you could just put throat. Should call it throat. It's just, it's the aggressive stuff that kicks through. And I like that bass, and it can do, pop, country, R&B, metal. And I've covered all those genres with that one instrument.
Gotcha.
And then from that, we went to a very organic 4-string, yet again, older maple cap, 21 frets only, bit more Fenderish, if you will. Very plain, simple, lovely instrument. When they had almost finished it, Joey Laricella at Federa called me and said, "Oh, Andy, it's nearly finished." And I only live a mile from Federa in Brooklyn. And he said, "We just got to put the preamp in." I said, "But it sounds great." "It sounds great, Joe?" I said, "Oh, it sounds great." I said, "We're done." So I think was maybe one of the first passive Federa basses ever made. Wow. PJ, Lindy Fralin, underwound, 2% underwound pickups, weak pickups. The sound of that beautiful one-piece alder body and wood comes through, and I still use it that way. It's a wonderful instrument, and I love it.
Absolutely. Well, in getting the resonance, I was just reading a book by the luthier, master luthier Chuck Traeger, and all of his work was in uprights. But the man had been working on finding the right vibrational wood interface, is what he was referring to. I mean, he was building until he was almost 90.
Wow.
And he passed away just last year. So this book is kind of the notebook of all of the directions that he had gone, substituting the peg for metal using wood and what wood and this and that and all of those small details that you've captured by your experience, and someone like Vinny would go, okay, yeah, I get exactly what that is.
It's once you've had a taste.
Yes.
It's like, I've got to have that again, or maybe this might improve that. The search continues. I really didn't do anything for nearly 20 years. I had nice sounding instruments. I had nice sounding amps and preamps, and everything sounded great. But once you get curious, and once you start recording a lot, and you can't be without it. And I think I've almost found a place where I'm very happy now. I like the tone that I get, and it's a band ensemble tone. It's not a solo tone. I mean, that's a totally different animal altogether. But I like the way my sound works in an ensemble in a band.
Nice. And with you staying pure to the sound of the wood, do you use much in the way of pedals or anything?
I don't. I use zero pedals. I am straight into either a tube preamp or a tube amp. I'm still all over tubes. I love them.
Gotcha. And you're playing Ampeg?
I'm playing Ampeg.
Gotcha.
I have I still actually, when they allow me to bring it out, I still have I think it's a 69 Blue Line B15.
Nice.
Which actually just got reworked again by Dennis Kager, who helped develop the SVT. He lives in New Jersey. We go out and geek out for a day out in central Jersey, and he's that B15 still sounds wonderful. I still record with that. People have come up to me at certain shows and said, I was scared for you. The tone in the house was so clear. In an arena where the bass can be lost.
Yeah.
What were you using? I said, a 1969 B15 with a Sennheiser 421 pointed at it.
There you go.
If it ain't broke.
Totally.
So, but in pedals, no, I'm pretty much, as I said, a little old school with that stuff. I can't. I know that you can model stuff to sound similar, but I feel tubes. There's just a certain. It's a steak with a little more marbling in it. You know what I mean? You can get a great. You know what I'm saying? I shouldn't be reaching for metaphors, but I feel it, and if I don't feel it, I yearn for it.
Gotcha. Well, and I think especially depending on the kinds of music too, because if you're doing something way metally that you need to wah or you need to use an octaver or anything
distortion,
like that,
overdrive. I get that.
Yeah, but it's with what you're doing, it sounds like the purity of the wood is what really needs to come through.
And I think in my world and with the bands I play with, it's pretty much been covered by that. If I get called to do anything else, well, of course I'll look at what that genre of music requires, and I've always prided myself on that I've worked with country artists, I've worked with hard rock artists, I've worked with pop artists, piano bands, guitar bands, synth bands, whatever. We have a saying in Australia: horses for courses. You don't use a steeplechase horse on a sprint race.
Exactly.
It's so I that's part of being professional and being malleable.
Gotcha. Well, very cool. Any preference in strings or any other addendums that we should mention?
I've been a DR player for over 20 years.
Another New Jersey institution?
I didn't even know that. I've been lucky enough to be offered stuff a lot all my career, and I never take an endorsement if I don't believe in the product.
Totally.
Never. I don't. I can buy my own strings. Billy will buy my strings, and Billy can afford to.
Yeah.
But I was offered all sorts of deals. I'm like, nope. I like DRs. I like their aggressive tone. I use a DR lowrider.
Okay.
45 to 105 if I'm in standard tuning. I might drop that up to a DDT, which is a metal string actually, but retains a lot more string tension if I'm doing a drop tuning of some kind of half step down, a full step down, depending on what the job entails. And I've just, I've been with them for over 20 years, and I give them so little. Can you send us a photo? Can you do something? Well, I'm so sorry, because Anthony Corona and the family, the Drongers are wonderful people, and they've been so supportive. And 20 years.
Well, rest assured that they will see this,
Good.
So they will know as well all the bass community.
And I believe they're coming to Madison Square Garden this month too for the show. So
nice.
they come along every now and then.
Nice. Well, and looking ahead, what's in the plans of the future? Because bassists are kind of like sharks. There's a perpetual motion.
18 years with Billy. Once you're here, you never want to leave. It sounds like a cliche, but it really is family. Mm-hmm. And we've all been here a very long time. And while he's not touring as much as he used to, he looks after us. It enables me to have time to pursue other things, like the shotgun wedding thing for a time. I've moved on from that now, but I have my basement is filling up with Les Pauls, Gretsch's, and Marshalls at the moment. So I don't think I'm going to go back to '92, but I'm going to, I think there's going to be a little bit of hair coming out of in the attitude of what I'm going to do next.
There you go.
So I've got a piano record I want to do. That's actually my background is classical piano, so I'm going to do that. I'm not sure who will sing it or front it, but I'm fortunate enough to be able to indulge myself in these other projects. If they sell 100 or 1,000 or 100,000 albums, it doesn't really matter. It's something I do purely for joy. So I'm looking forward to doing that next year, and I've got to keep moving amps and guitars through the basement because, yet again, the quest for that
you
time.
You only have so much room, too.
I just keep, now I'm going back to looking for, I like those Filtertrons. And so a bit of guitar playing again, which is fun. But same concept, great wood, underwound pickups that let the wood speak, Filtertrons, mini humbuckers, things like that. And it will be, probably the 4-string through that old 45-year-old SVT or Blue Line SVT or the new Ampeg V4B, which the reissue, I adore.
Nice.
And while there's many a micro light rig that I can get around on the New York City subways, if I have to take the car to a show, I'm humping tubes, man. I will gladly hump tubes because that's what puts a smile on my face.
Well, and weight, as we all age, weight starts being a real issue where you start going, this is...
I need someone else for the Blue Line SVT, but the V4B is like 30-something pounds for the head, and those 212 cabinets are also only about 30 pounds, and they sound... I can't tell you how good that amp sounds. I was blown away with that. So that's my if I'm taking the car, that's my rig, a V4. It's only 100 watts, but the loudest 100 watts you ever heard, and a 212 cab. And if I'm getting someone else to hump it, we get out the 2 flatback 8x10s and the Blue Line SVT, and we go make some real noise.
There you go. There you go. Well, and with all of the stuff that's going on, so that people know, because I know that they started inquiring, they're going, gee, where can I see? Where's the best places for people to look up and find, like BillyJoel.com, I would imagine?
BillyJoel.com, there's always a list of upcoming dates, which at the moment is the Madison Square Garden thing rolls on. We're approaching show number 50 on the trot in March. So once a month at the Garden. And then, 1 or 2 flyaways each month. So here we are in Portland, one of my, really, I mean it sincerely, one of my favorite cities in the country. Tampa, we're going to Europe to do some dates in June, and there'll be bits and pieces popping up.
Gotcha. So, and with any of your other stuff, do you have a web place that you like to send people?
As I said, the world's worst self-promoter, but I guess if I do start to, when I get these things finished next year, I'll be out there, finding some, 20-something to help me, do all that.
Yes.
But there's Andy Cichon Bass on Facebook. There's also a link on Billy Joel's band page that goes to that. And, as things start to ramp up, I'll be getting a little more active.
Well, Andy, we appreciate you taking time out of a busy schedule. People, you've seen it here. Andy Cichon, coming to you live on Bass Musician Magazine.